Welcome to Short and to the Point, a podcast from the Comeback in Awful Announcing. Here's your host, Jessica Kleinschmidt.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Short and to the Point. Jessica Kleinschmidt here for Awful Announcing and the Comeback. We're headed towards spring training, which is fine. Everything's fine. I'm a little overwhelmed. There's a lot of A's prep going on, but I took a break from the 2024 season prep for a really exciting episode. I couldn't tell you, I can't put into words how excited I was for this guest. And I'm so thankful to my producer, Philip, for getting him on. I'm from a very small town, a small community in a small town, Reno, Nevada. Reno used to be small before people discovered it. That's a whole different thing. But I am cheating on baseball because I have a 5-time Supercross champion, 15 AMA championships under his belt, 10 in motocross. He was never beaten in his 125 Supercross class, a 3-time X Games gold medalist, a Motorsports Hall of Fame inductee. They call him the GOAT. I have to list them off because there are so many illustrious accolades for this man. The one and only Ricky Carmichael joins me today. And I mentioned the small town I grew up in. My brother and I would rot on the couch on the weekends if we weren't playing baseball or our parents weren't Uber driving us to and from the field. And we would just rot on the couch and watch Supercross. We would watch these motocross. I was more of a a freestyle girl. But we're so enthralled with dirt bikes and racing, and we would watch Ricky Carmichael win every damn week. And of course, he was going up against the Jerry McGraths of the world, Chad Reed, James Bubba Stewart, and my brother and I became so close. One of the reasons is because of motocross and our relationship with him, our relationship with the sport, I should say. And this was just really cool. Like my parents took us to all the events at Reno Livestock Event Center to watch racing, and to have Ricky on here was amazing. And to say that he exceeded my expectations would be the understatement of the year. I know I'm being cheesy, but let me have this moment. This was really cool. I prepped really hard for this. Both my producer and I did, and I'm very thankful for this moment and this opportunity. So without further ado, here is my amazing chat with Ricky Carmichael. As promised, Ricky Carmichael's here. It's an honor for you to be here. Thanks so much for stopping by. Short and to the point. Let's get started.
Yeah. I'm excited. Thanks for having me. We're going to have a lot of fun today.
We are. And, it's been really cool watching you transition from racing to the analyst booth to hosting. It looks like it comes natural for you. Is that the case? And what was that transition like?
Well, it definitely didn't come natural. That's for sure. So I dabbled a little bit in it. And when I sat out the 2004 Supercross series, because I had my ACL repaired, I stepped in on a couple of the broadcasts at some of the races, and it was fun to do that. And when I was in that moment, it was never something that I thought in that moment, like, hey, I want to do this down the road when I retire from racing. And then fast forward to when I did retire from racing, I stepped in on an occasion here and there, and would join in on the broadcast. So then one thing led to another, and then I became like a guy, but just part-time.
Yeah.
In the booth, just because I was doing other things and I wasn't ready to travel so much, coming off traveling basically my whole life. So I was doing like a part-time gig, just a handful of events, and just things started to progress, and one thing led to another, and here I am full-time as an analyst for Monster Energy Supercross and the Super Motocross World Championship. And it's been a lot of fun, really, since NBC Sports has taken over. Just their commitment to making things better, and then the whole the streaming package with Peacock and what that looks like. I've had a good time. It's definitely something that, to your point, I know I've been long-winded. It didn't come natural to me. I've had to work at it. I still make a lot of mistakes, still want to be better. It's been a challenge, to say the least. I've worked with several different play-by-play people. And, so that each play-by-play person has a different style and how they do things and a different flow, and flow is super important in any broadcast. So getting that timing right has been challenging but fun. It's been fun for me to learn how working with different play-by-play guys and what their expectations are, and just like I said, what their timing is and how they do things. But I've learned from a lot of great people too. And the first person that comes off the top of my list is Lee Diffie. The guy's been around. He's done a lot at a very, very high level, and I credit a lot of my success. And it's no slight towards the people that I've worked with and other play-by-play professionals, but he definitely has spent a ton of time critiquing me and just making me better and simplifying it too. So definitely didn't come natural, and that was kind of my journey.
And it's kind of cool because you've always been a competitor, so you're able to still utilize your competitive edge in this. So
Yeah.
what was your first surprise and I don't want to say you went into it naive at all, but when you kind of got some feedback, you're like, cool, I can build off of this. There's still a challenge here.
Yeah, so that's an awesome question, and it was funny until about 5 years ago. See, I've been in the seat, probably 4 years ago. I was sitting in the booth at Anaheim, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm just supposed to sit here and tell the how and the why. That's my job of an analyst, and share to the viewers why this person made this pass, how they made this pass, and give the viewers something to look forward to, and predict things if I know, or I can see a pass developing, or where this pass might go down. I did like it just clicked. And then once that clicked, because before that it was almost like I was almost doing like race announcing at the same time, rather than telling the how and the why. And it was really making it more complicated, to be honest with you. So once I learned that and figured it out and knew my role and exactly what an analyst position is and what they're supposed to do, I was like, okay. Because before that, man, I don't know if I was feeling it, And then once I learned that, then it was game on at that point. So each broadcast, I get fired up at myself, and it's funny because some of the keyboard warriors and the fans, they like to chew you up these days and critique you so much. And it's funny because I'll have what I think wasn't a good race call, and then they love it, and then when I do have a good race call, and I feel like my analysis was on point and I gave great insight, then they tear me a new one. So it's like it's so bizarre how that happens. But I'm a lot like when I was racing. Like, I know when I put in a good performance, and I know when I could have been better or I made too many mistakes.
And you've been in the industry for a while, where when you were on the up and up, Twitter wasn't around. Social media certainly didn't exist to a certain extent. First of all, the fact that Ricky Carmichael reads comments blows my mind, but that's a whole different issue. Yeah. How were you able to adjust? Because at the beginning of your career, you wouldn't go home, look on your iPhone and see all your mentions blowing up. But then you did eventually toward the end, and then especially as an analyst. So how do you ignore those things?
It's hard not to ignore it. Especially I have two kiddos, and they're twins, boy-girl twins, and they're pushing 17 years old. So you can imagine the world that they live in, and the social media influence that is upon them. And so I hear things, not necessarily from them, but so because of them, I feel like I do scroll a lot more on comments, and it's hard not to. Some comments, some people are legit, and they're right and they're spot on. But I would say 98% of the people have completely no idea what they're talking about. It's so opinionated. And so those are the ones I'm just like, oh my gosh, I wish I wish I could silence those folks, but you can't. Luckily for me, Jess, is I've been like this my whole way, or I've been this way my whole life. Is I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at, most importantly. And I don't let things bother me. It just kind of like water on a duck's back. It just rolls off. Does it bother me? I think the biggest thing that bothers me, I should say, is when someone is judging me for my character when they don't even know me. That's the thing that I would say is hurtful, because I feel like at the end of the day, if I wasn't who I am and what I've accomplished, I know the kind of person that I am. I'm the kind of person that if you don't know me, I open the door for people. You know, if
Right.
you're at the grocery market and an older person drops their groceries, I'm the guy that helps them out. You know, most great people, nice people do that. Thoughtful people do that. I'm a father, you know, I'm just a normal father. I feel like I'm a great parent, and I want the best for my children, and I want the best for everybody. And I'm just a fun, loving, fun dude. And so when someone really attacks me and I feel like they're attacking my character, that's when it fires me up.
And I know you're fun loving, but you know, you can't talk about you without talking about your work ethic. And Chad Reed himself said he's never gone up against anybody who is as talented as you. And you
Mhm.
have this work ethic about you, borderline insanity is what I've read and heard. It's not
Right.
me saying it. But you also say you know what you're not good at. How do you challenge that? Because if you're very much always winning and you have all these amazing accolades, but you're also embracing what you're not good at. What are you not good at and that you've embraced it?
Ooh, I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm not good at. I mean, if you want to start from a broadcast perspective, that's what we're talking about is, you know, like I wish my vocabulary was better, straight
Mm,
up. And truth be told, and I get beat up a little bit for that. My wife helps me out a lot also on that end of being better in that regard.
she's
But
ridiculously smart. She's so
yeah,
smart. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
she is, yeah, she's got it going on. So, like, I wish, like, critiquing myself, I wish I was better there. I work on it. I don't work on it like I probably should. But truth be told, I've never had great vocabulary. Even when I was a
Mhm.
little kid going through school, that was always really hard for me. Don't need a sympathy card or anything, but it was. I had to really work on that extra hard for tests and exams rather than it be math or something like that. But back when I was racing, you talk about talent. I had a lot of talent for sure, but I had more work ethic than I had talent. And so like supercross was always hard for me. So I had to really, really work at it. And I had to know where I wasn't going to make big gains.
Mhm.
I had to realize that so I could focus on other areas to be better. Like there was only certain, you know, certain speeds or a certain level that I was going to reach on said supercross obstacles. So I would work really hard in that area, but I'd work just as hard in other areas to
Mhm.
offset where I needed to be better. So, to parallel it for you, that's where I wasn't good, and outside of that, you know, just each day I wake up and I wonder how I'm going to be better. How can I be a
Mm,
better person? You know, and not be judgmental towards anybody, and just always have a positive outlook. And I tell my kids this all the time. It's like, you know, they're teenagers and they want, you know, they got comments, and I'm just like, hey, don't worry about the comments. Who cares about
mhm,
it? You focus on you. You do the best that you can do every single day. You wake up and you say, "How can I be the best version of me?"
mm.
And you know, don't worry about or don't cast judgment on anyone. And that's my everyday plan and what I do, and it helps me. So yeah, I mean, that's how I try to be better in just life. That's how I try to be better in broadcasting, and that's how I tried to be better in racing.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, there's a confidence about you too. And I saw an interview with Roger DeCoster. He said he, meaning Ricky Carmichael,
Right.
wants to win as much on Mondays as he does on race day. And he
Yeah.
was also asked, you know, the most confident guys coming out of the gate. He mentioned you, he mentioned Bob Hanna. And
Mhm.
so when it comes to confidence, what where does that come into? And was that a learned thing over time after you were getting wins under your belt? And why is that important to have in your life?
You know, it's funny is like everyone thought that I was confident, but I
Interesting.
mean, I was confident and I knew that I had just as much of a chance to win as anyone else on the gate because I knew that I prepared more than anyone else, or you know, at least the same, if not more than everyone else. I had to, just because I lacked talent where compared to some of my competitors. But really, I was scared when I was racing, scared to get beat.
Mm,
So yes, I was confident in my abilities, but at the same time, I raced scared because I didn't want I didn't, I didn't want to be defeated. So I don't know. That's almost to me a lack of confidence, racing
Mm,
scared. Now it worked out,
yeah.
and that's what I think when you race scared. Having confidence is one thing, but respecting your competitors and knowing that, hey, those guys are good too, and they can beat you on said day. I think if you have that mentality and that outlook, and just know that you can be beaten, I think that gives you some almost debt motivation, and it makes you work harder. And that's how I approached it. So I don't know that I would call it confidence, but
Mm.
yeah, that was how I approached my racing. And it may have looked like it was confidence to you guys, but I was scared to get beat.
And that's interesting. So do you think you were harder on yourself? Because you said you respected your opponents, but
Mhm.
was that from the beginning? Was there ever any saltiness or pettiness, or were you just more hard on yourself than anybody else?
Yeah, you know what? You brought up something really good, and it comes from my parents.
Yeah.
My parents taught me that, like, hey, these guys are practicing just like you are, and they want to win just as bad as you do.
Mhm.
So when you've been told that I started racing when I was 5 years old. So when you've been told that your whole life, and each race that you go to, and in practicing and preparing each week leading up to that event, it gets instilled and ingrained in your head, and
Yeah.
that these guys are racing to beat you, and that, what, you might not be good enough to beat these guys, so you better work hard. And that's all I knew ever since I was a little kid, from when I first started racing.
But you hated racing at the beginning.
Oh,
You
oh
hated
yeah.
racing motorcycles. So to go
Yep.
from that to now you're labeled the GOAT, that's such an interesting journey. So walk me through crying in the helmet and
Oh,
racing and all of that.
yeah, it was a heck of a journey for sure. And none of my family, like my mom or dad, weren't in racing or anything like that. My cousins raced, and that's really where it came from. As my cousins would race locally, and my dad got me a motorcycle. Yeah, so then I just started riding locally, racing locally, then regionally, then nationally. But I was taught to do it right or don't do it at all. But
Mhm.
it felt like a job
Yeah.
at such a young age. And I had a gift, like we all have gifts, and you find these things. Some people find it earlier in their life, some people find it later in their life. What they want to be, what they can be, I feel like. But I learned at a very young age, that I could see and recognize what my parents were doing for me, and what the sacrifices that they're making. Like a lot of parents, they make sacrifices, but not having a whole lot as far as funding, and doing a lot with a little. I recognize that. And so really, yeah, I mean, I hated racing. I was basically racing for my parents, and I
Mhm.
just didn't want to let them down. And they would always tell me, hey, if you don't want to race anymore,
Mm.
that's fine. But I felt like in the back of my mind that that would maybe crush them. I don't
Yeah.
know, maybe I'm wrong. But at the same time, even though they weren't forcing me to race, um, and I hated racing, there must have been something in the back of my mind that kept me going, and I didn't want to stop. So, yeah, it was, I hated it. So there were times during the week, when I was little, that I would be like praying for rain. Like when I was at school, I'm like, gosh, I hope it rains today so I don't have to go practice and I get the day off. There's a burnout factor there. You
Yeah.
see it a lot. Like that's what I get scared about. Like travel ball for baseball players is, these young kids, they're starting out, they're doing league games, and then you got travel ball, and it just never stops, and
Mhm.
it's over and over and over, and it's so redundant, and you're missing fun times. Now sometimes to be the best, that's what you have to do, and the
Mhm.
repetition is good for sure. But I also feel like not every kid is I don't recommend every kid taking my route. It wouldn't work for certain kids. For me, it worked. I
Yeah.
needed that repetition. I was okay. Was I burnt out? Of course I would, but I wasn't to the point. Of course I was burnt out, but I wasn't to the point where like I was going to quit for sure. I'm just like, this is just the way it is. This is what I want to do to a certain extent. And I just got to stick with it. This is the way it's going to be. It might suck at times, but that's just how it goes.
And it's interesting you say it felt like a job when you were a kid, but when you're an athlete, that comes later in life. And sometimes there's a huge monetary contract involved. You're in the middle of like a 5-year deal or something, or maybe a 10-year deal. So you hear that later on in life. Did that come up again as your career progressed, that it did feel like a job?
The older I got,
Yeah.
the less it felt like a job.
That's
Like
awesome.
a job that I didn't like. Once I was old enough and I turned professional, like it was an official job, but at
Mhm.
least I was being paid to do it, right? And
Mhm.
then there was incentives. Where when I was a young kid, let's just go from like the ages of 9 into 13, 14, where you're not sure if you're going to be able to make it professional, and the practicing is just so much and you don't really get to race a lot. That was the nice thing about when I turned professional. You're racing pretty much all the time. So if you had a bad weekend, boom, you were able to go try to redeem yourself the
Yeah.
next week. You didn't have to wait months. And then you didn't have to practice as much during the week because you're busy traveling or doing what have you. So it actually got easier in that aspect when I became pro. The burnout got less. Didn't feel as much like a job, or there wasn't this big question mark looming. Am I going to make it? Because I was being paid for it. So those thoughts went away. The worst times for sure were like 9 to like 13, 14,
Mm.
when there's no end in sight and everything is just so repetitive and so, again, so redundant, and it's just like it never stops and you're like, is it going to work out or is it not? It was brutal. And you think about, like, there's so many fun things that you do as a young kid. Now looking
I was
back,
just gonna ask, were you able to have fun?
no, I mean,
Oh,
I had fun. Yeah, I had
yeah.
fun. There were times that I had fun, but definitely not as much fun as my friends at school were having.
Mm.
That's for sure. But I will say, as much as I thought that I was missing out then, there's no shot that I would have had as much fun back then as I am right now, or I've had in the last 8 years of my life. There's
Oh.
no way.
And I think that that's important because I feel like in high school, I knew
Mhm.
I wasn't done. And was that the same for you? Because I feel like when we're in high school and I was in a smaller town where that's
Uh-huh.
where a lot of people peaked. But
Yeah.
did you ever have it in your mind like, this isn't over, I got to keep going? There's so much more fun I can have as time goes on?
No, I didn't. Oh, that really. No, when I was in high school, I was just like, I was so focused at the time of trying to become
Mm.
professional. And like, so I was like that was kind of my whole mindset. And a lot was happening like my freshman year until my junior year. My ninth week of my junior year is when I stopped going to school because I had signed my first professional contract. So like from when I was a freshman until that time when I stopped going to school, there were talks of me becoming a professional, so I could start to see the light, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
I knew that school was pretty much over for me, and I had a bright future ahead of me. I just had to go out and work and execute and do what I know I needed to do. By any stretch of imagination, did I think that I had made it?
Mhm.
But I knew, like, okay, I'm going to be okay stopping school here and going and pursuing my dream.
And it's interesting because you said earlier the route I took isn't for everybody. And
Yeah.
especially if you have young people approaching, they want advice from you. When
Mhm.
you want to give advice, I don't know if you have it just like the same thing over and over again, you tell them, but is there extra pressure because of what you went through and you're giving like advice about somebody's future? That can be kind of scary.
It is,
Mhm.
when I do these, RCUs, Ricky Carmichael universities, and these parents, they ask you, "Do you think my kid can make it?"
Mm.
You're just like,
Whew.
"Oh, it's so tough," right? Like, you don't wanna be rude, but at the same time, with that being in the back of my mind, you don't always know.
Mhm.
Like for you or for myself, like, we've seen so many so many young athletes not prosper. And then we've seen just some mediocre athletes when they were younger
Yeah.
become ultra stars. So there's a point, I feel like, when you have a rider or set athlete that they transition to another level. And for me, I've seen so many amateur guys be super successful, but then they get to the pro ranks, and they don't make that jump, they don't make that leap. And whether it's because the mental aspect or the pressure gets to them, so there is some honesty there when I tell them, like, I can't tell you if the rider is going to make it or not.
Mm,
You have to stick with it, and only time is going to tell. But at the end of the day, what I do tell them a lot is, and this is important, is your rider has to want to win more than you want to win.
mm,
I think in a lot of amateur sports, you get parents or guardians that want to win more than the athlete does. And
yeah.
that's the disconnect. And I feel like as a parent or guardian, you have to do the best that you can to make sure that the balance doesn't shift. And I can tell you, as much as I hated the weekly grind when I was a little kid and wished that it would rain so I didn't have to practice, there's one thing for sure, is that I wanted to win more than my parents wanted me to win.
Mm.
That is a fact.
I love that. Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the parents because you mentioned travel ball. That's such a trigger word for me. I just remember parents. I was a
I didn't
travel ball kid. My brother was like,
oh,
we
I
had
didn't
amazing
trigger
parents.
you, did I? I
Oh
didn't
gosh,
trigger you?
like I had amazing parents. They let me do whatever I want, and they were the same. Like we love baseball. You don't have to do it, but we
Uh-huh.
were surrounded by parents whose kids really had no talent, and they were just living their own dreams through their kid. And I remember seeing that at the age of like 8 or 9. It was
Uh-huh.
crazy. And it's so just like sends
Right?
me down,
So it's just
freaks
like
me out.
it's like, dude, like, and maybe we're different just
Yeah.
because we grew up, in sports, and we've been around the elite, and competed at an elite level. So we maybe we know now, like, if our kids weren't
Yeah.
gonna make it at an earlier age. So maybe we have an unfair advantage.
Let's talk about this clip I saw recently. You went back to the goat farm in Georgia,
Yeah.
and it was really cool to see you in the old shop. What was it
Yeah.
like revisiting that property?
Yeah, it was cool. So to go back there, and once in a while I still go back, but slowly over time, the Star Yamaha Monster Energy team are transforming it into their own compound and franchise, if you will. It's been incredible to see what they have done up at that place. But yeah, I mean, you don't know how cool it is, and the nostalgia of it. What that's like until after the fact, at least for me.
Mhm.
So yeah, when I go back there, I kind of go back in time, and I think about, what it was like there, and the fun times that I spent there. And a lot of the times weren't pleasant.
Mhm.
That was a place of work for me, and I was there to do a job. Really, I wasn't there to always have fun. So it's a bag of mixed emotions for those reasons. But it's cool to look back and just see what I was able to accomplish there, uh, and what it didn't have as far as the tangibles and the resources, compared to what the resources are there. And it's funny, my dad always says, yeah, they got all this shiny stuff over here,
Yeah.
but look at what we had, and we got X amount of championships, or you got X amount of championships, X amount of wins, and it worked just fine with that. So I'm like, well, you have a point there, Dad.
I have a weird question only because it came to mind. When you walk into the shop and you mentioned the mixed emotions, when you smell it, does that do anything for you? Is there a certain smell that goes with it?
Yeah, so not at the goat farm,
Okay.
but certain stadiums, definitely.
Oh.
Like, I remember, like, Glendale, or it was Phoenix at the time, when Banquet
Mhm.
Ballpark, when we were racing there. I loved racing there. So you walk in, and it was just like a smell. And then the Atlanta, Georgia Dome. So you
Mm.
walk in there, and it smelled like churros.
Oh,
You know what a
that'll do it.
churro is. Like, it smelled so good. But to your point, yeah, you walk in there, and then the smells, you're just like, "Oh, man." it just, and you start thinking about the success that you've had there and great moments in your career, especially, you know, when say if you were having a bad year, you walk in there and just that smell, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be a
Mm,
good, this is going to be a good weekend for sure. I'm going to have a great night tonight. So to your point, absolutely,
yeah.
like smells and of certain stadiums and venues for sure. It could
Yeah.
leave you with a good mindset, but never the smell. Never really triggered anything for me to bring back memories at my old place. That's good.
But
That's funny. I like that. Yeah, that
I
was
just because like that just always does it for me. Even the smell like a ballpark or a studio, like
yeah.
I get there and it's the right mentality.
Right?
And
It's weird
yeah,
how
it's
it's
so
weird, like,
good.
the vibe you get in when as soon as you
Ugh.
walk, you're like, "Man, this place smells so good. It's gonna be a good weekend."
Yeah, or like Eric Church's Springsteen. When you hear a certain song, you're like, oh man,
Yep,
like
that's right. Oh, yeah, 100% how all those little triggers like that can bring you back to a certain time, and it's almost like it can bring you back to that exact moment, like you were in
yeah,
that moment, and that
yeah,
moment that you're remembering could have happened 20 years ago.
yeah.
And, I have, like there are certain times in races that I can remember certain pebbles of rock, like a
Whoa.
small little pebble of rock, like,
Yeah.
it just man, I remember that little pebble right there is there every single lap. It's crazy,
Oh my gosh, I love that. It's those
right?
little
It's
minute
like
details. That's amazing.
yeah, I got a, excuse me, a friend of mine, Dean Palmer, is a great friend of mine. He lives here in town. And we're kind of on the same schedule. He's retired now, and he played in the big leagues for 13 years. And we talk about that. We talk about
Mhm.
like certain smells, and he talk about certain ball fields that he
Oh,
loved going to, or certain stadiums, ball fields, towns, and
the
just
restaurants they would have to go to.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, hundred
yeah,
percent, hundred
yeah.
percent.
I love that. And
I
you
I tell
mentioned
you what though, you talking about baseball, you've done your homework. That's my, that was my favorite sport. That's my
okay.
favorite sport to play.
This is so good. I knew I loved you. So what about baseball was what made it your sport?
Well, that's the first sport that I ever played
Mm,
was baseball. Throughout little league, like T-ball and then little league, like I loved playing it. I loved everything about it. I used to get so excited for practices, so excited for games. And I was like 8 years old, I think. Yeah, I think it was, yeah, 8 or 9. 7 to 9. I was in there, and we were doing both. Like, I was playing little league, and then I was racing, and then there started to become, conflicts and scheduling, and
yep.
mom was like, "Hey, it's getting to the point now you're getting pretty good at both. And if you want to do motocross, we're motocross all in, or you want to play ball, we're ball all in. But we've gotten to the level now where you're going to have to pick which one you want to do." And for the life, and you talk about smells, I remember exactly where I was when my mom had this conversation with me. I can remember it
Really?
like it was yesterday. I remember exactly where we parked, what ball field it was at, everywhere. I can remember everything. And for some crazy reason, I picked dirt bike racing. And I think it was still pretty it was the burnout factor clearly wasn't
Yeah.
there, because if the burnout factor was there, I probably would have picked baseball. But yeah, I always loved baseball, even like today. Like if when my son was doing it, playing, like I loved going to practices. I loved playing catch with him, and I loved fielding more than I liked to hit.
Me
And
too.
yeah, it just
Yeah.
I love it. I just absolutely love it. Now watching is a different scene, obviously. The World Series, I love watching that, and
Yeah.
playoff ball, and anything. Playoff ball is just so much fun to watch.
Yeah.
Everything is ratcheted up, the pressure is, and everything's on the line. So it makes it a lot funner to watch. But yep, that was my
Love
true
it.
love.
Oh, that's amazing. If you're ever in the Bay Area, let me leave you some Oakland A's tickets.
All right.
I'll set you
I
up. It'll be great.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right, I will. I will hit
Yeah.
you up for sure. I'm down for it. It's America's favorite pastime, hot
Yeah.
dogs in a ball game. Come on.
Yes. It's going by faster. So I think you'll appreciate it more now. Not the
Yeah.
new.
What is it? What's the time limit? 3 hours or no?
Well, pretty much. So we had a game that went over 3 hours last year, and I was so spoiled because of like the new rules that I was like, ew, a 3 hour game. So I didn't leave the ballpark until like 10:30 at night, which was way past my bedtime because I was adjusted to the new rules. But very rarely are we getting 3 hour games. It's like a 2 hour, 45-minute game now. So my social life is back. It's amazing. I don't really
Yeah,
have a
you know,
social life,
it's
but if I
crazy.
did,
Isn't it crazy when you think about like the history of baseball or all sports and just how the attention span is so much shorter now? And I think a lot of it is because of these silly devices that we have, you know, in our hand all the time.
Mhm.
I think there's a certain extent to what's causing that. We have everything at the tip of our fingers now. And it's crazy that it can change such a historical element of a sport like that.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
nuts. But I think, you know, like you got to change. You have to change with change, no matter how much you disagree with it. To some extent, you might not like it, but you better learn to love it because that's just
Yeah.
the way it's going to go. We don't have to agree with it, but
Right.
I do like this. I do like the shorter stuff. I'm kind of a product of my own
Me too.
environment now.
Well, and it's interesting you say that because I think you were on Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s podcast. And you were talking about wanting to cater to the new demographic, the younger demographic being introduced into motorsports, which
Mhm,
is cool. Like you're an old school guy, but you want to embrace the young crowd. Was that
mhm.
easy for you? Or were you kind of a stickler with, let's leave everything like it is, or you're embracing like a new transition into certain aspects of motorsports?
Yeah, so I'm all for like I'm not so much of a historical guy as far as motocross and
Okay.
supercross goes to where I want to keep it the same. I understand like the outdoor motocross season, you know, for this day and age, it's a lot on a
Yeah.
Saturday. It's you know, it's a time commitment. It's during the summer. And you know, if you're having pool parties or you want to go out on the boat, it's hard to commit 5 to 6 hours of time on a
Mhm.
weekend, especially if you have young kids. So, and I think my kids, you know, like they're almost 17, and just kind of growing with them and learning how they operate has probably helped. So when there needs to be a change in the sport, I'm not totally against it because I do think, you know, you have to change or you're going to get left behind for the most part. Some things I think should be left alone for as long as they can, but at the same time, you have to be willing and open to the idea. And again, you have to on certain things. I think it's important to consider changing with the times.
And it's interesting to call you the GOAT because I
I
feel like
hate
that
that. I hate that too, right?
that's what I was gonna ask you though, and I don't disagree whatsoever,
Mm,
but what are your thoughts on beyond just hating it, but
yeah.
having that attached to you? Is there pressure there? What's going on with that being introduced to define you?
Yeah, this is the way that I look at it, you know, is I was fortunate at what I did and I won, you know, I won a bunch of supercross races and championships. I won a bunch of motocross races and championships. And, you know, it's just like there's this debate of with myself and McGrath and all that. Like we were both successful. As far as the greatest of all time, I don't know that I would say that I'm the greatest of all time, but as a combined sport with motocross and supercross and total wins, I would say that I'm the winningest racer of all time. That I'll claim that. But as far as the
Mhm.
greatest, honestly, it's yeah, man, there's so many good athletes, you know, that have come across the sport that I certainly know that I wasn't the greatest. That's for
Mm.
sure. When you take everything as a whole. Now, winningest, 100%.
So
But
numbers
great,
are a factor. What
what's
about the
that?
stuff what about the non-number factor? Because you could be like the great guy in the locker room.
That
Does
yeah,
that
no,
factor into it?
exactly, yeah, to your point, that's why there's so many great guys, like, yeah, I'll claim winning, but there were things that I didn't do great on the motorcycle,
Oh.
and there are things that I could have done better off the track also. So, yeah, like, greatest, that's tough tag, you know?
And so when this
It
name, this
doesn't
event
bother me though, like, I don't
okay.
Like, yeah. Like when people ask me, or like, what's it like to be tagged as a GOAT? I don't look at myself like that. So
Mhm.
there is zero pressure for me. Like when someone says, "Oh, he's the GOAT," it's like it just kind of rolls off my back. I don't really
Mm.
think about it. Yeah, no pressure there.
Yeah, not at all. Freaks me
Right.
out just to have like it's always that debate, like LeBron versus MJ. And when it comes to that, when fantasy sports, people are always calling, X, Y, and Z. And I'm right there with you. I think it's such a beautiful term. And I meet people when I talk to the athletes, like you're not going to see the numbers on a baseball, you're going to see the numbers on a baseball reference page, but I want them to know the soul of this person. That's what,
Right.
in my mind, makes that person a GOAT, and like that just
Right.
adds
Yeah.
to all of
Totally. I mean,
it. Yeah.
yeah, there's so many factors and so many elements that go into being the greatest. Again, winningest. You can there's not much you can debate about that, in any sport. But greatest, I mean, especially like team sports and what you're involved with all the time.
Yeah.
Like I can't that to me even makes it tougher, right?
Hmm.
Because say you're with a team that's a complete powerhouse and you have the supporting roles of your other teammates and coaches and just organizations. How much of it was that compared to, was it
Yeah.
just that athlete? I mean, I couldn't
Right.
imagine having that debate being
Yeah.
it's all.
Like, I never wanna vote for, like, a Hall of Famer. I never wanna be involved in any of those
Oh,
conversations
sure you
because
do.
I would me no, I'd mess it up. And you think my mentions are bad now as a woman in sports? You voting for, like, a Hall of Fame induction? Be a terrible
You know what?
situation.
It's funny. You know what's so cool? You just brought something to my mind is, because I'm in the Hall of Fame, Motorsports Hall of Fame, AMA Hall of Fame, and, whenever I get the ballot each year and they send people, they want my vote, and it's so hard because I'm looking at the names. I'm like, "Well, he's worthy of this nomination. That person's worthy of this nomination." Yeah, it's like you're making me like I hate judging
Yeah.
people. So it's like, don't let me do this. So I'm with
Yeah.
you.
I
It's
told
hard,
you.
right? It's
Like,
like, well, this person's deserving of this. Like,
I love the idea of it. Like, if I ever got asked to do it, like, that's so wonderful, but I don't wanna actually do it.
right.
Ugh.
Well, you're probably gonna have to Sunday.
Yeah,
So
I might as well just suck it up. You're right.
yeah, just figure
Um,
it out. I mean, I think what happens, like at least for me, when I'm looking at the ballot and the inductees, like you just start to break it down a little bit more, right? Instead,
mhm,
you start to break down like, okay, well, this person in this discipline, who was that person facing?
mhm.
How long was the season? And then you move to the next discipline. You're like, okay, was that the same playing field? I know it's different disciplines, but was it the same playing field if the roles were reversed?
Yeah.
You just have to break it down a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, good for you.
No,
Luckily, I don't have to
you'll
worry
be
about
doing it you're gonna be doing it, so you
I'm gonna
bet
be
that
messaging you, be like, "Well, it happened and I'm terrified." I was right.
do it, do it.
Yeah.
That's right, do it. Yeah, I
Um,
I I don't know if I can give you good advice, but I'll give you something.
I'm just gonna act like I never saw the email. Like, I guess I missed it. Sorry.
Right, right.
Let's I wanted to ask you about retirement. And
Mhm,
you had an exit strategy, which
mhm.
when you said that in an interview, that didn't surprise me in the least bit. And you
Right.
didn't regret it. You didn't go back on your word. You didn't do a Tom Brady, Brett Favre thing. But when it came to that, when did you
Mhm.
start having those discussions with yourself and your family about, okay, this is when I'm planning on making this decision?
Yeah, as soon as I was negotiating my final Suzuki contract, so that was in 2004 is when I ended up signing my Suzuki contract for 2005, 6, and part-time in 2007, and I
Mhm.
remember sitting there and going through the negotiating stages. I'm like, "Listen, if everything goes to plan and I can win this, like that, I'll be happy. Like, I'll
Yeah.
be completely stoked." And I left a buffer in '07 to do some sweep work if I needed to, as far as championship goes and things like that. So, um, I knew 3 years prior. And yeah, that's why I did what I did with Suzuki. I did the 05, 05, 06, and then again I left 07 as to do some housekeeping if I needed
Mhm.
to. Luckily, I didn't have to. So I just knew. I knew where I was mentally. I knew what I had to. I knew how much I had left to give, and lack thereof. Had I accomplished everything that I wanted to, yeah, I had a good feel. I had a good feel, and it's almost like yourself and your body. You know how you feel. If you
Yeah.
don't feel good or something isn't exactly right, you know that. No one knows
Mhm.
your body like you do. And so like same situation. I knew how much more I had to give at the level that I was competing at. So I was content. I was content with everything, accomplished what I wanted to, didn't leave anything on the table.
Amazing.
And at the same time I could sit here and circle the cart with my health, with my mind, and wonder, okay, what if I would have kept racing? But would the money have mattered at this stage? Probably not. It probably
Mhm.
wouldn't change much of what I'm doing. It's not like it was 30 more million dollars,
Yeah.
or something that's really going to impact my life and how I live my life now. And it probably wouldn't have. So I made the right decision. I'm not gonna, play devil's advocate just because it is, I'm not gonna speculate or
Yeah.
comment on speculation. It does no one any good. So I'm stoked on what I did. Really, there was nothing left for me to do. Everything would have been icing on the cake at that point. And again, most importantly, I got out healthy, and that
Yeah.
was the main thing.
And that's what's interesting too, because I've covered a lot of athletes who retired and their body broke down before their mind did, essentially, and they
Yeah.
weren't on the same playing field anymore. And you
Mhm.
almost got to see an overview and see the road that it was heading on. That's such a rare thing. That's so
Yeah,
cool.
you're able to see, like the prime was gone,
Yeah.
and you start to win on, you're needing things to win, as far
Mm,
as I'm gonna need a little bit of luck. I'm gonna have to rely on my experience. I can't rely on my speed that much,
mm.
as much as I could have, say, in the past. And I was gonna have to start winning on a default. And when that
Wow.
happens, I think you're playing with fire, especially in our sport, and the dangers of it.
Yeah.
And the speeds were getting a little bit higher, the level of difficulty of sections and supercross and that riders are doing. I just wasn't willing to make that sacrifice anymore, and I didn't have to. And you know what? At that time, I was good. So I'm
Yeah.
like, it is what it is. And I was able to recognize that time is passing me by, and I better get out while I can. And I'm not going to just go out there and have to rely on something happening to someone else for me to get a win. I don't want to do that,
Were you
because eventually it's
comfortable
going to run
embracing
out.
that?
What's that?
Sorry. Were you
Go ahead.
comfortable embracing that? Because you
Oh yeah.
said you have to depend on luck and you weren't fighting it at all?
Yeah, I was 100% comfortable with that. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. I would have been more uncomfortable out there doing something that I didn't want to do, and being
Yeah.
put into a corner to where like you had to do this gnarly section if you wanted to win. That would have sucked for sure.
Right. I wanted to talk to you about your NASCAR career, and
Mhm.
you talked about racing at Martinsville, which was really interesting because you said while you were racing it, I don't know if it was a muscle memory thing, but it reminded you of racing in Supercross.
It did.
So
It did.
what does that feel like?
Yeah, the NASCAR stuff was a lot of fun. It happened so fast. I
Mhm.
met a lot of great people there, still have a lot of great friends in that industry. I'm so thankful for that opportunity. Man, it was so much fun. Uh, but I loved Martinsville because the timing of it, it's a shorter track. It's not like a super speedway where you just going wide open all the time and just,
Mhm.
you're working the draft and things of that. So yeah, it was more of a timing like Supercross, getting the jumps right, getting the obstacles right, making sure you're doing everything right in the corners, braking, accelerating. It was very similar to, yeah, it brought me back to my Supercross days because of the
Mhm.
timing and precision that it took.
Right.
And and I always did well there. And I think a big attribute to that, and the reason for that, was because of my background in Supercross racing, and
Mhm.
the timing and the agility of it that it took.
Well, and there's a transition there, and to go
Yeah.
from 2 wheels to 4 wheels, and you said it wasn't just that factor, but you're a guy who's dirt and mud, and
Yeah.
then you switch that factor too. Can you explain to people how
Mhm.
tough that transition can actually be?
That transition was really tough, going from, you live your whole life on 2
Yeah.
wheels and in dirt, and then you go to 4 wheels that you're racing on pavement. So knowing what you can get away with on dirt on 2 wheels, and not knowing what you can get away with on pavement in 4 wheels is completely different. And then
Mhm.
really trying to make up for lost time, 20 years of lost time of not racing 4 wheels since you were a little
Yeah.
kid. That's tough to do. It's tough to
Yeah.
do. When I came up through NASCAR, they had done away with any testing, to try to help the smaller funded teams, or the teams that weren't funded as heavily as the big teams, to give them an advantage. So I wasn't able to like practice during the week, which was really, really tough to make up for
Yeah.
that lost time that I was telling you about.
Wow.
But yeah, so it is what it is. I mean, I knew that going in, but at the same time, it was still, even though like I wanted to keep going and
Yeah.
and reach the pinnacle, and I didn't. I still had some pretty cool accomplishments, and again, it was an incredible experience, and it was a great segue to leave Supercross and motocross, something that I had done forever, and just didn't stop. Just didn't quit
Mm.
racing, and just didn't retire and then just ride off into the sunset. So I had something to keep my mind
Right.
occupied as well, and it was a nice way to end basically my racing career as a whole.
Does that mental aspect remain the same comparatively to your Supercross days?
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, there's so many other components in NASCAR compared to motocross stuff.
Mhm.
You rely a lot on the team, you rely a lot on setup, you rely a lot on aerodynamics, and there's only so much you can do. If you got a fifth
Mhm.
place car, fifth is about all you're gonna get,
Yeah.
where it wasn't like that in motocross. So once
Mhm.
I learned that, you just had to accept that, and it helped. It helped the end result. I'm like, okay, I can't overdrive this thing. This is the only speed that this vehicle has, and this is just what it's gonna be. Now I have to take that and use it to its capabilities. I can't try to over exceed on that. And yeah, it was a weird dynamic for
Mhm.
sure. But once I learned it, still you still go out there and you push yourself, you do the best that you can. And yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was a
Yeah.
fun time in my racing career.
Weird dynamic is one of my favorite things to say because it's the perfect definition when you don't have a definition.
Right. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
just weird. Yeah, it's a weird dynamic. Yeah, I
Mhm.
don't have a perfect definition for you. That's why I said
Works
that.
that works for me. That works for me. Last few, and I swear I'll let you go.
Oh,
Daytona's coming up, and you designed the track, which is so cool, first and foremost. But this upcoming track, it seems like there's a switch up going on there. What went into the design this time?
yeah, we're excited about Daytona. I mean, you think about Daytona in general, and the people that have come there. Such an iconic race,
Yeah.
iconic speedway, sacred grounds for sure. Whether it's 4 wheels, 2 wheels, a lot of great race car drivers, motorcycle racers have come through there. Excited about Daytona Supercross. Daytona Supercross is like one of those races where you ask any athletes, they want to win. They want to win Daytona. They want to win the season opener. It's just it has that tag next to it.
Mhm.
So I'm fortunate enough to be the track designer, and we've changed the direction of the track
Mhm.
this year. So we're excited about that. We've implemented the over and under bridge that goes to some of the Monster Energy Supercross races. So that just gives you more options. That's why we used it this year, and that gave us an opportunity for the track to go the opposite direction. So we're looking forward to it. It's the kickoff of we're at the first weekend, kicking off Bike Week. So it's just an epic weekend. And then of course I have my Ricky Carmichael amateur Supercross the Sunday and Monday after the pro event, which is kind of gets the year off for the amateurs kicked off that race. So I'm excited for it. It's a hectic week. I wish I could go there and it not be work,
Right.
not be work. But yeah, I'll be running around. I wear a lot of hats that weekend.
Because you're for sure being an analyst. So what else will you be doing? You're manning the track, making sure everything's okay? What else do you do?
Yeah, we got a great track crew involved that they're the unsung heroes. They do a lot of the work. But yeah, so I have my amateur Supercross that I'm an ambassador for, and kind of have some light oversight and can make suggestions and just be there in support of our great amateurs and the event. Love doing it. And then you talk about the pro event. I'm an analyst for NBC Sports, so that takes up a lot of time. But then in front of that, because I designed the track and my relationship with Daytona International Speedway, I ride the track. I go and do like voiceovers for the track for the live event and give fans some things to look at. And so they run videos from that. So yeah, I wear the hat as the track designer. Then I got the NBC analyst hat and then the amateur Supercross hat. So nevertheless, it's a busy weekend. And then, while you're wearing those hats outside of the NBC stuff, the sponsors, I'm representing my sponsors. So it's a busy weekend, but a fun weekend.
And there was one aspect to the track that I thought was really cool. And you mentioned there's a dramatic factor to it with the sand part. And of course you're in Daytona, the beach, all of that. And that really made me giddy because I just love that aspect of a race. What dramatic parts go into this? Because it's just adding to the fan experience. That's really cool.
Yeah, Daytona is in nature. It's going to get rough. So you don't have to like throw gas on the fire to make the track any rougher or gnarlier physically than what it's naturally going to develop as. So, putting in the Daytona sand part is my favorite, just because something so simple, like the reason that I like is because something so simple by just laying like beach sand out there can create this massive storyline and can create what is very, very difficult for these riders. And it's just, you throw a wrench into the plan. So that's why I like that, and creating just creating that chaos. And it's not a dangerous chaos. It's that's what I like about it.
Creator of chaos. I love that. Another hat in the ring for you, the creator of chaos. And James Stewart will be on the call with you, right?
Yeah. So JS will be on the call for that one. So that'll be fun. I mean, listen, he's just down the road, not far. So it'd be great to have James back in the booth for sure, especially because I'll be running around doing so much. I'll let him do he can do the heavy lifting that weekend. So be glad to have him back in the booth. It's been a while. I was supposed to see him at Anaheim. I miss him at Anaheim, but always fun to have JS back in the booth. So it'll be a lot of fun.
What can you say about him? Because I don't know, I read something along the lines, you kind of nudged him during broadcast, and you guys were on the broadcast together, helping him out a little bit. How has he grown as an analyst?
Yeah, he does a great job. He brings a completely different twist to it than I do, and I think that's what makes it fun for the fans and the viewers. He has his outlook on what riders are doing, and I have my outlook on what riders are doing. My way isn't the right way. His way isn't the wrong way. Like it's good. It works good. It's a good balance. It's tough in Supercross just because the tracks are so much shorter. So you talk about the timing, and when we're not working together every single weekend, although we have a good time, I mean, we have to work at it. Work at it. But it's fun. It's good, and it's good for us to somehow organically share our stories and what we were experiencing while we were racing each other or racing those events, and what it was like. And if we can share those moments and parallel it with the viewers, then that's a good broadcast.
Definitely. Well, before I let you go, this interview has been a true honor for me. I'm from Reno, Nevada, where we're very outside, dirt bikes, all of it. And my
Yeah.
brother, when we weren't doing the travel ball thing, we would just rot on the couch and watch you, Chad Reed, Jeremy McGrath. We called him Bubba Stewart back then, and watch him race. And so without even knowing it, you brought me and my baby brother very, very close growing up. And he's the love of my life. And I just wanted to say thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for having me. I had a great time. This was a
Me
lot
too.
of fun. You did a fabulous job. And
Thank
then
you. You did as well.
If I'm ever around Oakland, I'm gonna hit you up, and
Please
then
do.
I'm gonna have a hot dog, maybe a beverage. I'm gonna
Get a
watch some
churro. You have to. Their churros at the Coliseum are so good.
Oh,
They're
do they
so
got
good.
any hot caramel sauce I can dip it in though?
I will bring you some hot caramel sauce. I'll do that.
Don't do that. I don't need the added calories, but and
That's
then
fair.
whenever you're coming to if you're ever around our neck of the woods, you're coming to a race, you can sit in the booth with us.
Done.
Love it.
I love that. I love that. Thanks so much.
Yep, thank you.
All right, folks. I told you it was amazing. I didn't cry. I thought I was going to cry because, just talking about my childhood with watching Ricky Carmichael and him racing and just being dominant was amazing. And the fact that I was able to interview him for a podcast and an episode and just something that I'm so passionate about just is fantastic. I thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you loved the conversation as much as I did, because I put in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen. And I'm very happy. And I'm thankful for each and every one of you every single week. I know I'm getting so many DMs about these episodes, and I'm so thankful for it. If you guys could subscribe where you can get all of your podcasts and rate them, I would greatly appreciate it. Follow everything on Awful Announcing and The Comeback. And of course, where all of your podcasts are. And I will see you next time.
Want even more short and to the point? Follow Jessica at Kleinschmidt JD and head over to thecomeback.com and awfulannouncing.com.